Anna Henry. I am glad to be live with Dr. Anand Agarwal, Group CEO of STL. Hello, Anand. How are you today?
Good, Anna. I'm doing well. I hope you too.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us so late from India. So, first questions to jump right into it. In the post-COVID world, what is the role of digital transformation, and how would you say the pandemic accelerated the digital transformation?
See, clearly the pandemic has made digital an all-encompassing phenomenon for all of us. Till now, we used to almost think that digital was sort of an extension of what we are doing in telecommunication, etc. And the applications were also largely relegated mostly to some entertainment and some enterprise-oriented application. But with the pandemic, digital is now really come across as one of the core utilities, just like what we need electricity and other core utilities. The digital connectivity has become a clear requirement, and the applications which ride on these digital platforms, whether conversations like what we are doing right now, whether it's work from home, whether it is education online, all these concepts had always existed, but the pandemic has now made it mandatory. And over time, people are now realizing that it is also very, very effective as well as efficient. So while the pandemic made it forced people to change their behaviors in moving digital and in a large way, we believe the realization is also coming on towards the efficacy and efficiency of this transformation. And we're finding that it's here to stay. It's not going to go back post-pandemic. A lot of this transformation will become permanent.
Absolutely. So I hear three key words would be the behavior, the efficiency, and then it's here to stay, as in we're going to be in this situation for a while and we might as well make the best of it, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, whether we are in the pandemic situation or not, but the digital move, the shift to digital in terms of working from home, in terms of communicating over, say, virtual conferences, in terms of education in a major way moving digitally, all these things will start becoming more and more permanent.
Absolutely. So moving to question number 2, what would you say is the role of the private sector, especially the technology sector like STL, to building forward better, which was the title of our global launch to which you assisted?
Sure. I think it's clearly the way it has going to play out more. It's going to be extremely, extremely collaborative. The way I see it, there are consumers who are consuming all these applications, whether it is an education application, whether it is a healthcare, whether it is governance, whether it's conferencing applications. Then there is platform, and then there is on which all these applications are hosted. And then there is the key infrastructure that gets created. I would say the private sector is playing a very, very strong role in making sure that there are relevant applications so that people are not really missing out to a large extent other than the social aspect in terms of the efficacy of getting value from these applications. Private sector is also making a very, very strong role in the platforms as well as technologies that come in. And with newer technologies such as a newer version of Wi-Fi for connectivity with 5G coming in, technology is playing a very, very strong role in making sure that within the current infrastructure, within the current ecosystem, how do we make the best out of it? In terms of the right applications, in terms of the right reach, in terms of making sure that we have the right connectivity, right connectedness, the private sector is playing a strong role in great collaboration. I would say that the government is playing a strong role in developing infrastructure as well as enabling it along with. And we are seeing this example in various parts of the world where the governments are coming out and enabling the infrastructure end, while the private sector is leveraging that infrastructure towards newer technologies to deliver the best applications to the user.
Absolutely. Leveraging infrastructure is going to be very essential. There is a clear necessity for reskilling and upskilling in firms to meet those digital challenges and adapt to new environments. Drawing on STL's experience during the pandemic, what are the best practices that you could share with us for growing economies faced with those need of talent landscape transformations?
Absolutely. So what we are finding is it's working on both the levels. At one level, the technology itself is becoming much more and more user-friendly. So the newer applications which are coming in, at whether it is conferencing applications, whether it is the collaboration applications, whether it is just a communication application like WhatsApp with the multiplicity of features which are there, they're making the skilling and learning process very, very intuitive. So that's one part of it. On the other part, what's happening is most of the enterprise applications, so whether it is SAP or whether it is Salesforce, are moving to the cloud. So what we have done is we have collaborated with our partners towards skilling a large part of our workforce, towards making them very, very digitally adaptive. And the fact that a big part of our workforce is connected, is on some kind of mobile device or one of the fixed devices, we have used this opportunity for everyone to be connected from anywhere and being able to kind of collaborate and contribute in a manner which is conducive to what is required. And the fact that these applications themselves are becoming so and so user-friendly, this process of scaling wasn't as deep as maybe, say, it would have required, say, 2 to 3 years ago.
Okay, very good. So you've touched on question number 5 already. We see a lot of needs to change as everyone is way more online than usual due to the pandemic. But then how do you see your networks evolving to cater all the current needs and the future needs?
See, that what has happened currently with more and more people moving on the digital platform, that the network requirements have changed significantly. Like earlier, the traffic used to be only in selected parts of the network, maybe in the centralized business district more, and during certain hours of the day. Now, the traffic is all around. So people are working in a very disaggregated manner. Everyone is working from their preferred places of working, largely from homes, etc. The other thing is the traffic is becoming much more two-way traffic. It's a symmetric traffic. A lot of conferencing applications, a lot of applications which require online in-time feedback. So the networks are evolving. I won't say they are fully evolved. We are still finding areas where the network is not unable to keep the loads of what is required with more and more new digital applications coming up. But the networks are clearly evolving every single day in terms of reach, in terms of scale, in terms of capacity, and in terms of technologies. We are seeing the progression of 5G happening much faster than again what was thought of year and a half ago. We are seeing new infrastructure based on fiber being planned, being built up in a major way. We are seeing new kind of investments coming in the network part of the spectrum, because people are now realizing that this becomes a core infrastructure segment. So just like we had goods and services moving on physical infrastructure, similarly a lot of private equity capital is coming in on the digital infrastructure side as well. So in all aspects of from investment to capital to network to technology to applications and the consumers, there is activity in all the segments for the last 6-7 months. Renewed sense of urgency and activity.
Excellent. So yeah, the networks are evolving. You said on 3 different scopes: scale, capacity, and technologies. We're seeing new investment and new infrastructure, for example, on fibers. Okay, very good. So going back to governments, would you say they play a major role in restoring the normalcy? And what are the views from an Indian perspective where governments need to play a significant role to ensure as many citizens are digitally empowered as possible?
So the focus till date of the government clearly was on the right areas. Initially, it was a whole lot towards making sure that people are safe. The safety, security, healthcare was a large focus. Over the last few months, the government has become extremely active on this front itself, that how do we again play a collaborative role with the private sector in making sure that people are digitally connected. So one large program that the government is currently focused on, India has about 600,000 villages and almost more than 55% of the population of the country lives in these villages. Prime Minister has announced that in the next 3 years, all these villages will get connected with optical fiber. Entire idea is that instead of people being forced to move out of villages into cities for education, for healthcare, for getting jobs, how do we bring all these facilities using the digital infrastructure to villages, to smaller towns, so that the cities are not overly loaded and people can continue to operate from wherever preferably they would want to operate. There is a lot of focus now in terms of all sectors of government parts, whether it's healthcare, it's industry, transport, education. They're all combining to kind of look at a full digital task force, a full digital focus to create a digital infrastructure strategy for the country.
Excellent. Did you say 55% of
yes.
those villages?
Yes.
So I'm hearing, this is very important, and it's great to have an agent standpoint on that. You're saying there will be a shift, or at least a shift is necessary from all those villages that are not necessarily connected. Prime Minister said they would be in 3 years, so they don't need to make that shift to the bigger cities when it comes to healthcare, education, jobs, etc. Excellent. I do have one final question, if you still have 2 minutes for me. This was not part of, I'm just putting you on the spot, if you don't mind. What would you tell the old Anand Agarwal from back in March this year if you had known a pandemic was coming your way? Is there something you would have done differently? And I like to ask those questions because it's both personal and private. And I've had a really good answer from Harvard Kennedy School. She said, I think we could have been more ready. So is there something you would have done differently as a CEO,
I would say that embrace this change, which while there is definitely a darker side of the pandemic, but there is a lot of things which have happened towards positive shifts also, which have been forced by the pandemic. So I would say that taking the positive aspects which have been there, spending more time with families, being healthy, or finding newer ways to collaborate and work together, all these things which initially was a whole lot of uncertainty, in a whole lot of taking calls and evolution, in partly being driven out of the grayness, partly being driven out of the fear, could have been embraced. I would say now we feel a bit more stronger. We feel much more being able to take on newer challenges in grayer areas much more effectively, I would say.
So looking on the bright side and making sure it's human-centric. I think it's very important. Excellent. Well, this is it for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Anand Agarwal, Group CEO for STL. We'll be in touch soon.
Sure. Thanks, Anand.